Hi, my name is Dr. Marlene Carson. I'm here today at Provia, and we're going to do a human trafficking training. I'd like to thank the team here at Provia Inspire for allowing me to come in. And I want to thank you for even having an interest on helping abolish human trafficking in 2019. So thank you. I want to jump right into this. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the foundation of human trafficking. We're going to talk about signs, warning signs, red flags, and what you can do to help us abolish human trafficking. I'm actually going to be looking at my notes here, so I apologize in advance. But in the United States, there are 1.5 million victims of human trafficking in the United States. Globally, there's 20.9 million in the world victims of human trafficking. And this can include human trafficking, sex trafficking, labor trafficking, organ trafficking, and just different various types of trafficking, which there are many. A lot you'll probably see in the United States is labor trafficking and sex trafficking. There are some myths and misconceptions when you think about human trafficking. One of the myths is that in order to be trafficked, that you have to come from another country, that it doesn't happen here in America, and that transport has to be involved. And I can tell you that that is an absolute myth, that it does happen here in the United States. American citizens are trafficked every day without ever crossing a U.S. border. Now, I know we're talking about a wall, so it's a sensitive subject right now. I'm not going to get into that, but I can really tell you something about that wall. And I can also tell you that 93% of traffic victims in America are trafficked by U.S.-born citizens. I'll leave it at that. You can take it from there. Trafficking is happening right here in our neighborhood. It is an invisible crime hiding in plain sight. How does it happen here? How and why, actually? It happens in airports, seaports, railways, interstates, sports arenas, military bases, large homes, restaurants, and farming communities. Just think about your neighborhood. It's always said to me when I do these type of trainings that, oh, that never happens here. You know, we live in a safe community. And I just always ask to myself, what area in the world is safe? Because human trafficking, it crosses all boundaries. It crosses ethnic, racial, economic, it crosses all boundaries. So I understand wanting to feel like we are in a safe community, but I think we need to make it safe. And I think that we as a community need to come back together to make our community safe, to make our children safe. You know, it's life has changed a lot over the years for most of us who are parents and now grandparents. And back in my day, we used to play outside. We used to jump rope, and we would go to the playground and we would play kickball outside with the kids in the community. And it was always said that, you know, if we got in trouble down the street, every parent had permission to correct us in the whole community. Now, if you do that, you might be in for a big fight. So that doesn't happen anymore. And it breaks down the community. It breaks down the protection for our children. And even like most people don't want to get involved when it comes to issues like this or issues where it doesn't include or their children are not affected. But I'm telling you today, we need all eyes, ears, and feet on the ground. So let's go to myth number 2. Myth number 2 is it only happens to girls. That is absolutely a myth. The fact of the matter is that sex and labor trafficking happens to boys, girls, men, women, and LGBTQ. And it can happen to anyone. Myth number 3, a person must be held against their will or badly abused for it to be considered trafficking. No. The fact is, forms of force, fraud, or coercion and other severe compelling methods are used to control victims without ever being physically harmed. And so you see a lot of coercion online these days. Even as far as Facebook. A lot of kids don't do Facebook anymore, but they're doing Kick, they're doing Instagram. Instagram is a huge platform right now for trafficking. And most parents don't even know what Kick is. It's spelled K-I-K. And Kick has what's called a location spider in it, where if your child or if someone uses it, the person on the other side of that has a spider that gets right to your address or your location. And that's something that can't be turned off. So that you can't turn your location off on your phone and disable the Kick app. So you just want to watch what your kids are doing, because that's something that, that's coercion. A lot of coercion that takes place with these kids talking to people online that they've never seen. They don't know who's on the other side of that computer. And the interesting part about it, when you think of the dynamics of it, is these children or your kids are saying, oh, that's my friend, but they really don't know them. They become familiar with them because they see them all the time on Facebook or on some type of social media, but they don't know these people. And oftentimes we find that the person on the other side of that screen is an older man, older woman, and their intentions aren't good towards children. But these kids are being coerced every day to do things that parents don't want them to do. So let's go to myth number 4. And this is something that probably you guys would be really interested in. Victims are always transported to a different location. When it comes to the trucking industry, we know that trafficking takes place a lot at truck stops. I mean, that's probably like the number 3 place where trafficking takes place is truck stops. And that's first, I would say, would be online. Second would be like brothel areas. And third would be truck stops. So a trafficked person may never leave their home or even their actual location, and they can still be a victim. But when it comes to truck stops, and you may have identified this, you may see girls walking around all hours of day or night at a truck stop, knocking on the doors of the cabs or the trucks. And they could look just as normal. They could look like a kid going to school, and they don't have to have on a mini skirt, and no, they can look just as normal and unsuspecting, when the fact of the matter, they could be being trafficked by a trafficker that's in that same truck stop. But until you know how to identify it, and until you know who to call to help her, there's probably nothing that you can do. So by the end of this 20 minutes lesson, you're going to know what to do. Myth number 5. Prostitution isn't trafficking because they are getting paid. That's an absolute myth. Most people don't know that pimps take most, or traffickers take most, if not all, of the money. A majority of prostitution is considered trafficking for many different reasons. So let's take a look at what trafficking really is. And I think that's important that you guys know this. Human trafficking requires 3 elements. Action through the means for a specific purpose. So that's action through the means for a specific purpose. The action can be recruiting, harboring, transporting, providing, or obtaining of an individual. So when you obtain an individual for any other reason but to sell them, that's definitely a part of trafficking. That is action through the means. And the means could be false promises of a better life, false promises of a job, misrepresentation of work or working conditions. A lot of the girls that I've helped has told me things like, they promised me that I would be a model. And then, that was kind of an easy segue, because the girl could be beautiful. She thinks she has all the criteria to become a model. It could even be a desire. But that trafficker has definitely different intentions for her. And so that's a means to pull her in. Sometimes it's visa fraud or altered or fake contracts. There has been girls that I've helped that have been forced into marriages, the action through the means of a better life through a marriage. And they were sold to someone thinking they were going to have this husband and they were going to take care of them the rest of their life. And that has not been the case whatsoever. For the specific purpose, action through the means for a specific purpose. The purpose has been prostitution, pornography, stripping, online sex, survival sex, illegal massage. That's something we'll talk about a little later. Restaurant labor trafficking, farm workers labor trafficking, hospitality and bars would include labor trafficking, debt bondage. We just had a case in Columbus, Ohio, where there was a massage parlor, and the woman that owned the massage parlor had all these Asian women in her establishment. She has several throughout Ohio. And when the bust finally took place, we found out that this lady had brought these women over to America. She charged them $80,000 to get to America, and she promised them a job, and they had to pay her back. Well, she paid them $10 an hour. How long do you think it would literally take to pay someone $80,000 when you're making $10 an hour? And so she had them do different things to get money. Finally, there was a bust, and she was arrested. Let's see here. Forced marriage, we talked about that. Organ harvesting, that's something else where they are literally cutting out organs and trafficking organs. So let's talk about what a trafficker looks like. Sometimes when I ask this question, I like to show a picture, and oftentimes no one could ever guess who the trafficker is. When we just did a survey recently, we found that traffickers were anyone from police officers to pastors. There is no profile of a trafficker. They could literally be anyone. And unfortunately, because of the opiate epidemic, I think that's been a huge gateway into human trafficking. And parents are now becoming traffickers, selling literally their own children to gain access to drugs. And so a trafficker could be anyone. It literally can be anyone. And so to identify what that trafficker looks like, you would have to identify the actions, not the appearance, because they can look like just a normal guy sitting in an office, as well as someone with a big hat and platform shoes and whatever you think a trafficker would look like, or some gangster rapper or something like that. But the fact of the matter is, it could absolutely be anyone. Traffickers, there's 4 different types of traffickers. One is called a Romeo. The Romeo disguises himself as a legitimate relationship, as a boyfriend. The victim believes that he's her boyfriend until he turns her out and begins to psychologically manipulate her. And then she feels indebted to him, and she'll do just about anything he wants her to do. There's another type of trafficker called a guerrilla. And the guerrilla is a trafficker that is very, very violent. And usually he controls his victims with violence. There is a madam. You probably have heard the term madam before. And that is your female trafficker. Often manages brothels or escort services and works with a male trafficker oftentimes, but not necessarily, but she could. And most recently, we've seen a lot of gang trafficking. So gang trafficking is, back in the day, they used to have these gangs, and these gangs were probably pretty violent, and they would do a lot of shooting, things like that. Well, now they are actually trafficking boys and girls for initiation to get money. And so that's something that has been new on the scene over the last several years. And of course, because of the opiate epidemic, we are seeing a lot of family trafficking. Some of the traits and behaviors of traffickers, often older than the victim. A lot older. Like, she could be 13, he could be 30. And she's in love, and it's enough to show her dominance or show him dominance. And it's too good to be true. Normally it is. Sometimes there's a lot of blackmail, a lot of bullying, a lot of bait and switching going on. And that's part of the coercion, luring girls and boys into trafficking. There's also jealous, controlling, violent traits. Sometimes when you see these traffickers, they will be to a point where if they feel threatened, that you got to look at the victim. That's their ATM machine. So that victim, whether it's male or female, is their ATM machine. If anything comes between them and their money, which is that victim, they can become very violent, very controlling, and very jealous. And yeah, they show different characteristics and traits that can put that victim into harm's way. Let's see here. Who are the buyers? Oh, goodness. So most recently, there was a bust in Florida. 22 men were busted for soliciting to have sex with kids. And they range from men across state lines. They came from about 7 different states. One was a pastor who traveled to 2 locations to have sex with a 14-year-old boy. And they were actually busted and they were sentenced 5 years to life. And so when it comes to the buyers, again, they could be anybody. I would say 80% of the buyers are male, but they don't have to be. They definitely don't have to be. There are female buyers, just like there are male victims. So they don't have to be all men. And I think that kind of contributes to our perception of what a trafficker or a pimp looks like, what a victim looks like, what a buyer looks like. One research project we did, every single buyer was male, 30 to about 55, married, Caucasian, and had really, really good jobs. But that's what the buyer was. And when you think about it, even in my case, I think about who bought me as a kid. I was 15 years old, but who bought me as a kid? These guys paid $200 to $300, sometimes $500 to have sex with a kid. And that's not your average rate of pay for anything. And so that has to be someone of some substance. That's just not the guy riding down the street looking for a cheap thrill. That's someone that we're voting for. That's someone who we're buying cars from. That is someone who you'll see behind the pulpit. That's who they are. So how does this happen? We talked about the social media. 51% of all girls that are trafficked is by romance. They want a boyfriend. And so they're turning, 12 is the average age of entry. So they're turning 12, 13, 14 years old. And they want some attention, or these guys feel like they can give them some attention. And 51% of them, the girls that we surveyed, that's how they were trafficked. Let's talk about a gateway. Pornography is an absolute gateway to human trafficking. The reason why I want to really train men is because I think men can hold other men accountable. And we definitely need men of integrity. We need men that are committed to family. And we need men to hold other men accountable. And, you know, we hear about the good old boys club, a lot, at least in my world. I hear a lot about this good old boys club, that what goes on in the club stays in the club. But when it comes to exploiting people and selling people, coming against people's human rights, I think that's when the rules need to be broken. And I think at that point, the good old boys club needs to be exposed. And so we need men. We absolutely need men to end the demand. The demand side of this is the buyer side of this. You know, you have supply and demand. And so we need to end the demand. And we want to start a demand reduction campaign where we just basically empower you guys to hold your men accountable. Teach your boys. I think that's a good place to start, because we got to get on the prevention side of this. Teach your young men. Teach your young men to respect women, to take care of women. Chivalry shouldn't be dead. You know, just teach them all over again. If that be the case, if you haven't already, just start somewhere and hold those boys accountable, and then teach your sons to hold other young men accountable. Pornography is the #1 best marketing tool for trafficking. Profits from porn are used to purchase more victims. This was alarming to me, 1 out of every 4 images on the internet are of kids under 18 years old. 1 out of every 4 images. Majority of porn is made by victims under force and various forms of fraud and coercion. Pornography is as addictive and rewires the brain in the same way as heroin and cocaine. And watchers of porn often become buyers of sex. Can I tell you, because of this little thing right here, because of this little cell phone, kids are 7 seconds away from pornography. 7 seconds away from pornography. And if they get on the wrong site, it'll just pop up on their phone when they turn it on. They don't even have to go into a site. It'll just pop up on their phone. Watch what your kids are seeing. All right, who are the victims? We talked about the average age being 12 to 14 years old. They usually have certain vulnerabilities. They can be coming from a home of physical abuse, sexual abuse, foster care, and runaway. They may have mental disorders or disabilities. Some may have substance abuse or addictive behavior. Some could come out of a homelessness or a poverty setting. And all of them don't have to be these poor, drug-addicted criminals, because that definitely was not my story. Some of them could be emotionally void. They could have a significant need that a trafficker fulfills. And some could just be regular and normal, whatever that looks like. I oftentimes tell people that the only thing that I've seen that's normal lately is the setting on a washer and dryer, because I don't know what normal is anymore. But it just could be anybody. Here are some signs of a potential victim. They may not have control over their identification. They are accompanied by a person claiming to be a parent or a guardian. They seem confused about their whereabouts. They may have language barriers. They suddenly have a new or older boyfriend, new group of friends. They speak of a modeling or acting job. They talk about wild parties, invites others to go. All of their belongings are being carried in one bag. That's definitely something to watch for a teenager. They could dress inappropriately for where they're going. They have a very sexualized behavior. They become overly tired all the time, and they have a lot of inconsistencies in their stories. When they'll talk to you, they'll have total inconsistencies in their stories. They also can display a lot of expensive items. They can have a lot of cash on them, and they can brag about having and making lots of money and not telling you where they work. So those are just some of the signs of a potential victim. The victim's experience is they are often disoriented, confused, depressed, tense, nervous, and paranoid. They are very submissive to a person or their trafficker or their pimp, and fearful. They will give you little or no eye contact. They will be afraid to speak in front of other people. In today's time, they may even be branded. Some traffickers are branding with tattoos. There was one girl that we helped. She was 13 years old, and you can actually look this up online. This girl, the guy tattooed her eyelid. He literally had this girl's eyelid tattooed. And it's something that she can't remove. They may have signs of gang affiliation. Let's see. And they are deprived of sleep, food, and medical, and their education. And you'll be able to tell if you ever have a conversation with a traffic victim. Victims can feel discarded, unsafe, misused, like a criminal, rejected, and patronized. So I told you all that. I think we get down to the question of what can you do? So I've left here at Provia a card And I think all the truckers did get a card. And if you didn't, let Jamie know or let someone on the Inspire team know. That card is a toll-free number to call should you identify a traffic victim. I'll tell you the number. It's 888-373-7888. And that's the number to the National Human Trafficking Hotline. And I always admonish people to call that hotline number because they have protocols set in place that maybe local law enforcement will not. Local law enforcement may have to go in and investigate and just do things that would take over time. It might work out. But if I was being trafficked, I wouldn't want you to wait and have a whole investigation for someone to come and rescue me. We need help right now. And so call that number. Give as much information as you possibly can. Give make and model of car if you see one, description of the person, what they're wearing, any marks, tattoos, bruises, whatever, and direction on where you see a car going. You want to give them all just as much information as possible. And you might say to yourself, well, I don't know if she's being trafficked. Call the number. If you see something, say something, and let the professionals determine if it's a trafficking situation or not. But if you see something and you don't feel right about it, call that number, 888-373-7888. Let's see. Always take good notes. Take good notes, take pictures if you can. Don't put yourself in harm's way, though. Do not put yourself in harm's way. Don't let a trafficker or someone else see you taking pictures of someone. But if you can, take pictures and just have as much information as possible. I think that's it for now. I appreciate you guys. I thank you for allowing me to come in, and I'm absolutely sure that we will see each other again. Thank you.